What's up, citizens? As many of you know, before we recorded this episode, we posted to Facebook on our wall and to a couple of groups that we're in, and we asked y'all to describe Gen Z. And so what we asked was for y'all to describe Gen Z in 3 words. And some of y'all did really good at that. Some of y'all not so much. But here's what your responses were. I wanted to share with y'all a little bit about what y'all put. One of y'all said Gen Z is real. That's not 3 words, but it's cool. It's cool. Somebody else said entitled, lazy, and unprincipled, which that's really good because that's 3 words. Somebody else said a boomer youth rehashed, which I thought that was actually really interesting. Somebody else said the worst generation. That's pretty strong language. And we also have needs attention. See right there, that's 2 words, that's not 3. We also have pessimistic, radical, and angry. Also, we have delusioned, hopeful, and outspoken. And then somebody else decided they wanted to write 2 paragraphs. Here's what they said. It blows my mind that everyone's answer to this question is to automatically complain about the worst characteristics, as though their generations are perfect. As a millennial, I remember when we were the cultural punching bags and were just berated by people as being lazy, entitled, and whining. That did us so much good. In addition, he said, as someone who actually works with Gen Z every day, I've got some observations that are more well-founded than philosophizing behind the keyboard. And he said optimistic, passionate, and purposeful. So I share all that just to invite everybody who's watching this. Feel free to add some additional comments below. Let's get a conversation going on our thoughts about Gen Z. Maybe they're critical, maybe they're concerning thoughts, or maybe they're hopeful and optimistic. I don't know. But let's just see if we get the conversation going. And we also cover this in the episode that y'all are about to watch. And I hope you enjoy this conversation. I was able to sit down with a youth pastor, and he spends every day working with Gen Z students. So I hope y'all enjoy. Welcome to City Square Podcast, where we talk to everyday people about faith and work. My name is John, and if this is your first time tuning in, please take a quick moment to subscribe to the channel, like the video, don't forget to click the bell, and throughout the conversation, if you have any questions or comments, don't hesitate to drop them below. My guest this episode is Antonio, who is making his second appearance on City Square. How you doing today, man?
I am great. I am nasally and I'm tired. It's currently evening time,
Right.
and I'm going through it, but it's okay. God's good. So that sounded so cheesy. I don't ever even say that. I feel like a different person on a podcast. I'm getting used to this, but I'm good, man. I'm good.
I think everybody's different when they get on camera.
Yeah.
You got the pressure.
Yeah. I felt bad too whenever we were hopping on, because if you're listening, you won't know this, but I was late hopping on to the call, and just before this, we were just finishing up our Bible study, and tonight's topic was, why do bad things happen? You know, if God's so good, if God's all powerful, why do bad things happen? If bad things happen and He's all powerful and He doesn't stop them, then He's not good, right? So we're talking about that whole dilemma. And we had a really great conversation. And then after, I was late because one of our students asked a really good question, and she asked, what created sin? And so we got a chance to walk through some of Romans, and it was really cool gospel conversation. So I got to share the gospel to her, and she's heard it before, but it's like she's at that wrestling stage where she's like, she's a ninth grader, and she's at that wrestling stage where she's getting into those early stages of understanding theology and understanding sin, understanding the Trinity, and not fully understanding the Trinity, but you get the gist of what I'm saying. So it was just a really cool conversation, and it's one of those conversations that you can look back on that someone had with you that helped you build that foundation. So it was cool that she was trusting me to talk about those things and ask. So all that to say, sorry for being late.
No, you're good, man. Those are awesome conversations, dude. Because I mean, those are conversations that you can build off of. They don't have to
Yeah,
be like isolated conversations, but you can build off those.
yeah,
So that's
and
cool.
like we talked about before too, it's like our smart leaders are present there, like in that
Yeah.
moment. And so it was a cool, thankfully that her smart leader is my wife. And so she gets to spend time with Madison, my wife, uh, when I'm not there. And so it's just really cool that Madison gets to be in that environment and hear those conversations. So they can take that and go deeper, which is kind of like what our model is as a youth ministry. It's
Yeah,
cool.
that's awesome, dude.
Yeah.
It's like your wife gets to be involved in those things also. It sounds like.
Yeah. It's funny. She feels like um, whenever we were getting married and whatnot, all through that process, she was just kind of thrown into it
Yeah.
willingly, like joyfully. But it's funny, we've talked about like when she started being a SWAT leader, and she genuinely can't remember. Like we can't remember when she started being a SWAT leader. It's like she was just naturally woven into the leadership volunteer role, and we can't pinpoint when it was, but ever since then she's been rolling with it. So
So, what is a smart leader?
a smart leader.
Is that what you're calling smart leader, or is it a
Oh,
small leader? Like, what are you saying?
I probably blurred my words together. Small group leader. Sorry.
Wow, is that what you're?
That's what I've been saying. That's how nasally I am right now. It's like, I feel like I can't pronounce certain words.
Huh. Okay. All right. Um, man, I really hope you were slurring that together because, like, when this comes back around, like, one of us is gonna look ridiculous, and I'd
Yeah,
rather not
hopefully
be.
it's you.
Yeah, I know. Um, so I mean, so basically, so like, she's one of like the small group leaders, right?
Yeah.
And like, okay, and so like, did she start doing that after y'all got married, or was she doing that before?
She was doing that before.
Okay.
Whenever we got married, there's kind of just like that natural, you're a staff wife thing. And so, and she embraced that very well, and she loves it. Um, so when we did get married, um, she she definitely took it a lot more seriously. Not that she didn't take it seriously before, but she sees how God's calling her in the context of our marriage, right? Like we're
Yeah.
both in ministry, we're both called to ministry, and we are one, so we need to walk in that obedience there. So,
So for anybody who might not know, like, you're the assistant youth director at y'all's church, right?
yep.
Yeah.
So we have two associate youth directors now since we last talked. Two associate youth directors. And she's awesome. Her name's Heather Statzer, and if she ever listens to this, you are awesome and like a big sister to me. Shout out to Heather. And so it's me, Heather Statzer, our amazing family ministry assistant, Regina Rice, and then my awesome mentor and leader, Taylor Brent, who is the student pastor.
Gotcha. Cool, man. So it sounds like your Madison wife gets to does she gets to, I guess, spend time and disciple like some of like the young girls in the church as a small group leader.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, so she's part of our ninth and 10th grade small group home. So what's cool about our model is one of the things that we've noticed with our students in the context of our students in their generation, um, Generation Z, you know, here in a few years coming up on Generation Alpha, but connection's important, right? Like having meaningful connections important. And one thing that we found interesting was our students want to not just be with people their age, but people for outside of that bubble. So one step we took as a ministry was combining specific age groups that are appropriate to have deeper small group discussion with, but not create an environment where it's just them all the time. Like,
Yeah.
because if it was, there's not much opportunities for discipling to younger students or maybe less experienced students in their faith, or there's no opportunity for um, students to be discipled to, and look up to an example. And so right now, the way that we have it set up, Madison goes to a ninth and 10th grade home. Her and a few other lady volunteers go to this home within the community, and their students meet at this home, ninth and 10th grade girls and boys, and they have the option to have group discussion together as mixed gender, boy and girl, or they can split off depending on where the discussion's going,
Yeah.
and stuff like that. And so Madison does get a chance to spend time with those girls.
And you said Generation Alpha. You mean Gen Z, right?
Well, I'm saying like here in a couple years, Generation Alpha is going to
Okay.
be coming up into our ministry,
Yeah.
but like that's definitely one of the trends that is like I would say like Generation Z's, they care about connection and real meaningful connection.
Yeah.
Um, and you definitely see that trickling down to Generation Alpha. It looks a little bit different, but for sure see that affecting Generation Alpha for sure.
So, how is like Generation Z's desire for connection and like relationship is what you're talking about, right? Like genuine connection and relationships, that kind of thing. How is that different from like the millennial desire for for authentic community and that kind of thing?
Um, Man, so all right, so here's what I think of initially. Okay,
Yeah.
I have moments where okay, like I'm considered a millennial,
Yeah. So
right?
much.
Like that. Okay, are you too?
Yeah, I'm like one of the first of the millennials, the early millennial.
Nice, nice.
Yeah.
Um,
Some people want to
so
call us ex-ennials, but I think that's stupid.
well, put it this way, it's like one of the things that I was adjusting to, was this whole concept of talking, in dating relationships, right? That concept of talking where it's like there's now this added step in dating now where it's like not you don't just go from being friends to dating, you go from being friends, oh now we're talking, okay, now we're dating. That whole concept, I'm not gonna sit here and say argue if it's right or wrong or if I agree with it. But me as a millennial, I struggle with that because it was a way that, Gen Z does things and I'm just sitting back here like I disagree with that. Like I don't jive with that. I want to go straight into dating. Like that's where I was. Right? That's me personally. But
Oh, that's fascinating.
but and I didn't. I guess that view is more of a millennial view. If anything, I think
Yeah.
the millennials might have started that. But for me personally, I kind of related to the whole, you just jump right into dating. If you're interested in each other, you commit, and that's it, right? The reason why I bring all this up is because I think the main difference from millennials to Gen Z is connection looks different.
Yeah.
Connection looks different. Just because it looks different doesn't mean it makes it any less meaningful, right? And so I can sit here and say, oh, you sitting there holding a Snapchat streak with your, friend who lives in Arkansas who you haven't seen since the cruise back in 2016, but you hold a streak just because, and that's connection for you.
Dude, okay,
Like,
what? Okay, what's a streak?
you don't know about that?
Dude, I've used Snapchat like twice. I thought it was stupid. I actually,
So
honestly,
if you,
I thought it's defunct. I thought it was dead.
So
I
if
thought
you,
TikTok replaced it.
dude, it's not dead. It's even crazier now. You can literally chat with an AI. You can chat with ChatGPT on your Snapchat.
Oh, I didn't know we were going to talk about that tonight. Okay, all right.
Yeah, that's
That's,
another part of their generation too, right? But anyways, if I could answer that question, connection looks different. And so for me personally, as I'm leading Gen Z or as I'm ministering to them, if I want to teach them about a connection that's meaningful, and we all know that the only connection that's meaningful is the connection with Jesus, is living in relationship with Jesus. That's the only meaningful relationship. And that any relationship that we have after that with people, with our family, with our friends, comes through that relationship with Jesus, right? So we want to teach about meaningful connection. As a leader, I can't sit there and ridicule what they view as meaningful connection without first teaching what an understanding of a meaningful connection with Jesus is.
all right. Real
Does that
quick,
make
man.
sense?
I want to unpack that, but I still need you to tell me what a Snapchat streak is.
Okay. So if you not hold, but if you consistently Snapchat an individual for at least 3 days, a
Yeah,
little fire emoji pops up next to that person's name on your feed.
yeah,
And every day past that you Snapchat someone, you add another number, right? And so
yeah.
you can get 4 or 5, 6 days, 10 days. Once you get to a certain digit, the emoji changes to something. I don't know what it is now. I used to remember what it was. Um, I
Like,
used to care about that stuff too when I
do you
was
like get a gift card or something?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know nowadays. I haven't downloaded Snapchat. I haven't had Snapchat for years now for obvious reasons, but
Because
um I haven't
like,
had Snapchat since you knew me in college and that was a different Antonio.
that's probably good you don't have anymore, man. Um,
Yeah.
um, oh, dude. So like, the more I get involved in like the text based dude, things like that bother me
Yeah,
because like ultimately that's just a way for Snapchat to manipulate people to stay on their platform.
for sure.
And so like, but that does matter, especially like to like kids like you. They don't like to be called youth anymore; they like to be called students, right?
Yeah,
So like for students and stuff, like those things are big deals. And
right.
so like when you're talking to them, you don't want to just go in there and just run all over like those things that are meaningful to them. But I think it's in a sense kind of what you're building up to, man.
Right.
And
And
so like
sorry.
so like these so what you're saying is a lot of like their connection and like how they maintain relationships is more digital based than the previous generations, correct?
Yes, and not that I'm thinking that you're limiting it to that, but
No, no, I'm not saying it's
yeah, yeah,
exclusively
yeah.
that, but it's more
Right, right,
meaningful to
right. But
them.
it
Yeah,
definitely is for sure, for sure, for sure.
which is not inherently a bad thing. I mean, if,
Right.
right, you and I are talking right now through a video platform.
Yeah, 100%.
And
100%.
so this is cool. This is meaningful. Because
Oh
things
yeah.
like this exist, you and I still like have a connection. So like obviously these things are not like bad. They do have meaning. They do hold value in that kind
Yeah.
of but what you're saying is like the way that they do connection is a little bit is different. And in doing so in that way, it's more meaningful to them than it's to the millennials or Gen X and so on. Correct.
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yes. Yes. That's a very good way of putting it.
What are you doing, man?
I thought of a verse that may or may not apply, and again, to anyone that's listening, I'm just a little less than 2 years in ministry, and I'm learning. And so this may not contextually apply, but I'm glad you're on this with me because you can you can hold me accountable to this passage here.
See,
But First Corinthians,
now you're just putting a lot of pressure on me.
First Corinthians chapter 9, verse 22. First Corinthians chapter 9, verse 22. It says, "To the weak I became weak, in order to win the weak. I have become all things to all people, so that I may by every possible means save some." So I think about that often when it comes to Gen Z or
Yeah.
even any future generation. And like hold me accountable here to what the passage is saying because I'm not studied fully yet, on the context of all this. But the reason why I hold on to that is because Paul's making this clear distinction that if I have this traditional way of my generation, that I believe that this is the only way of true connection, then I'm limiting what God can do with the Gen Z's version of connection. Does that make sense?
No, no, yeah, man. And so I think kind of like what you're saying is like you want to understand the times that you exist in, so that you can be like the most effective that you can be. Correct?
Right. Because I believe that's
Yeah,
what Paul is doing there.
yeah. There's a lot he says in here, man. Like it's like to those who are under the law, I became under the law myself, and like so that I could save some and that kind of thing. And so like he's
Yeah.
basically saying is like I want to. He's like to the people I'm going to, I want to know who I'm going to, so that I can be basically effective to those who I'm going to.
Yeah.
And so
And
he's
then,
like he
and
wants to know and understand the people group. He wants to like to the without he wants to blend in without sinning, and so that he can be effective, so that people will like basically listen to him in a sense. Anyways, back on track, man. So we're not saying that Gen Z is only values community that is digital, but what we are saying is that they do value that more like than others do. And so like you're talking about like the Snapchat streaks and that kind of thing. So like that's a way that they value like community different than like millennials do.
yeah.
Because like I know when I was growing up, one of the things that they said that was different about millennials is how millennials value like they always call it authentic community. They want a community that's authentic and it's real. And it's like all that kind of stuff. It was weird. Like that was why like you saw there was a rise, which still wasn't a lot, but it was something of the like young like millennials that would move to like smaller and rural towns because they could get a
Uh,
better sense of community from small towns than they could in bigger cities. And
Interesting.
so yeah, and this was like before, way before COVID and stuff. Um,
Yeah.
so that's kind of why I was curious as to like what you meant by like Gen Z like values like relationships and that kind of thing. That's what I was asking.
Yeah. Part of me too is like, I wonder why the next generation feel that way about connection. Like, oh, we want authentic, we want real, meaningful connection.
Yeah,
Well, I think we talked about it before previously, but they see right through the bullcrap. Like
yeah,
this generation is very, very receptive to when someone's, is yanking their chain. And it shows. Um, and so I wonder, okay, what happened? What led this generation here, to this point where they, such an early age, didn't experience meaningful connection. So now that they're getting to that adolescent age where they're starting to think about reality, they're starting to think about their purpose and their value. And now, because of their lack of real meaningful connection at some point in their early lives, creates this urge, this need for real, authentic relationships. Whereas you and I, growing up, I never really worried about all my friends really being my friends. Like I just trusted that. And I don't know if that's a millennial thing or that's, subject to my context. Um, but where along the lines did that become such a high priority? Because I can imagine that earlier generations, authentic relationships were a norm. Now it's just like there's so much bullcrap in the world that our kids, the youth, are so subjective, are so aware of it, sorry, are so aware of this beware of fake relationships, you know? Does that make
yeah.
sense?
No, yeah, some of that makes sense, man.
So
I'm kind of I'm kind of curious about some of that though. Um,
I don't know. I'm new to this whole podcast things,
yeah,
but
I'm curious. Um, because like I mean, kids like even like teenagers, like kids, usually kids are really good about being able to tell whenever like somebody's BSing them,
yeah,
which is interesting because kids usually get accused of like being stupid and not knowing anything. But like if you're BSing them, like they know.
yeah,
That's generally when you catch them like having an attitude and quite often they're not being like rude and disrespectful. It's because like they sometimes not all the time they see it from you.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and so were you saying earlier that they they do or don't have a concern about whether or not people are their real friends?
They do,
Yeah.
they do
Okay.
for sure. Shout out to OVO Drake. No new friends, no new friends. All that songs, and then you got fake friends.
Yeah,
That song. How's that song go? I can't remember I know
dude,
the name of the song.
I have no idea, man. I don't really listen to
I can remember his dance. Anyways, I'm sorry. I'll stop.
it.
I'm vibing out in my head right now.
But let me see.
I didn't really answer the question though, did I?
You're as a part of it, man.
Yeah, I
But like,
think that.
so they value digital relationships higher, basically.
Yeah, for sure. Um,
Um,
for sure.
and so when like obviously like when you're with the kids, like you don't want to like speak ill of that or tell them it's stupid or and that kind of thing. But like, I mean, do you think that's a good thing?
Do I think technology is a good thing?
Yeah, but like, do you think like putting a high value on like digital relationships like is a good thing?
Because in the context of this generation,
Yeah.
because it's such a high priority on the list, absolutely.
Okay. Why is that?
I mean, it kind of goes back to were going to talk about.
So let me
Um,
let me let me let me ask you this way: is it a good thing if somebody would rather Snapchat a friend in a different state instead of go meet their friend they go to school with at a coffee shop?
that question, I like that question better.
Yeah.
I do not think that's a good thing.
Okay. All right.
Now, now I can get deeper into that and overthink it and say, okay, what kind of relationship, what's the content of this relationship? Like, is this student just simply going to meet with a friend because it's a person there, but the quality and the content of the relationship is trash? Or, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or is this Snapchat connection like, are they having meaningful, encouraging conversation that's leading to life? You know? So, and that's kind of like where I'm at with it is like, we are, yes, it's kind of crazy to me personally. Um, I'm learning to get more attached to technology so I can relate to our students because there are so many students that the content of their relationship with people through technology um is sometimes higher quality than the content that they have no option to be around in person, right? Like we have students who are in broken homes and their neighborhoods are not good neighborhoods.
Yeah.
And when it comes to the people that they get to be around, because they can't control who they're around to a certain point, right? As a
Right.
child, you can't drive. You can't, or even as a 15-year-old, you can't drive. You can't, there's no guarantee your parents are going to take you anywhere you ask.
No, you don't choose your family. You don't choose your neighborhood. You don't choose your
Yeah.
school. You don't choose any of that. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what I think we're seeing is that, yes, it's at face value, it can be alarming to see that a student wants to stay in and FaceTime so and so versus go
Yeah.
hang out in person. But if I, as a parent, or even as a small leader, small group leader, not a small leader, small group leader, am being asked by my student, what should I do? And I said, what's the quality of the relationship? What's the conversations that's being had?
Yeah.
And technology has been a way to foster quality relationships.
Okay. No, that's interesting, man. I mean, those are good points. Because like you have to factor in like the quality, like you're saying.
Yeah.
Like you gotta factor in the quality. I mean, it is helpful when you factor in like the home life experience, like the living, the quality of life that they do have where they actually live, and that kind of thing. So I mean, like that stuff
Yeah.
is so like you can't really make a blanket like yes it's good or yes it's bad.
Right. Right.
Um, with that being said, uh, there are certain ways, man, that I see it where I'm like some of this, like some of it isn't good.
Yes.
Because like I know people who like I
Thanks,
know
COVID.
dudes, right? Ah, man, don't do that to me.
All right, we won't go there. We won't go there. Turn left now.
I wanna
See you, COVID lane.
I wanna get monetized someday, dude. Because like I know dudes who like they won't meet girls in real life, but they've got a girlfriend on Snapchat who lives
They
like
won't
about
meet.
300,
Oh yeah, for sure.
like, who are like 1,500 miles away that they've never met in real life. And I'm
Yeah,
like, come on, dude, like
for sure.
you're better
And
than
then
that. Come
and
on.
then to your point, there are youth and some of our students who, when it comes to meeting with a good friend in
Yeah,
person, would rather talk with on the phone or Snapchat and stay at home and FaceTime, you know, a fun or exciting relationship, but really may not be healthy. And there is a lot of that. There's a lot of I'm
yeah,
attached to this and don't want to this is another end of it, but I don't want to expose myself to real connection. I don't want to expose myself
right,
to having to be vulnerable.
yeah.
That's a different side of it too.
It's like before C19, huh, this was an issue, but after C19,
That's an airplane, right?
yeah.
Hey,
After C19, it's an increasing issue. You have more and more younger people who have like social anxiety,
yeah, yeah, for sure.
and because they have social anxiety, they would rather connect with people over phones and computers than they would in real life.
Yep, yep,
It's like that, like that's a problem,
yeah.
right? Like, do y'all deal with that much? Like,
Oh yeah,
how do y'all feel about that?
man. So one of the cool things that I love about what our team has done, um, this is where we feel that youth ministry is moving in the direction of. Um, but one of the things that we do, and I briefly mentioned it, we meet in communities, right? We meet in 3 times a week. We have different homes that cover different areas throughout the Sugarland area and Richmond area. And these homes are vetted. They're picked by our team and they're members of the church. They open their home up and all these students will come and meet at their homes. Anywhere between 8 to 15, 20 students meet there.
Nice.
What we do is we all can't be at all those different homes at once, right? And so we actually have an amazing media team. And this is where I think the Bridge Church has been amazing is our media team. Shout out to our media team. They are incredible. I talked about that briefly before. But what we do is we record our messages. We broadcast them. We don't broadcast them. We post them on YouTube, and then our leaders, when they get to their homes, will pull up the TV and get YouTube on there, search up our page, and we have our recorded messages right there in front of them. And so they sit in the living room of the home and they listen to the message and the same content that they would receive in person. May not have the bantering that you can experience whenever you have people in front of you, right? But it's the truth. It's meaningful. It's the word. It's the word. So from there, it
So,
throws.
like, in small groups, you're saying?
Yes. And so here's
Oh,
what's cool about this though, is it's on YouTube. It's not like it's
Yeah.
exclusive to small group leaders at the homes. So we are actually able to meet our students at at their level and give them a resource to stay in touch with the youth ministry, even though they may not be showing up, even though they may not be going to small group. And me personally, I lead a 12th grade small group. And we've had a student who's definitely more so social anxiety. COVID hit him really hard, um, and doesn't ever often come to the church. But he's kept up with our teachings. He's shown up to group maybe 3 or 4 times over the semester, but he chooses to show up after working after school, and he shows up to small group. I mean, it's really cool. Um, and so it just goes to show that when we use technology in the way that our students are using it, we can leverage it to then foster meaningful connections.
Okay, so I want to make sure I understand kind of like what you're saying. So like all of y'all's like the sermons and teaching, y'all put that stuff up on YouTube for the public to see,
Yeah.
and it's there for people to watch in small groups in the homes, right?
Yes. Yes.
Instead of like showing up to the facility like on Sunday, right?
Right. Right.
Okay, but in addition to that, y'all have people who will choose to like watch it and by themselves, like alone.
Mhm. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
And what's really cool is we'll have our small group leaders use that as a resource. So
Yeah,
one of Madison's co-leaders, she'll take the link of the YouTube and throw it into their small groups group message. And we have a few students that attend different churches with their families, but when they come to group and they've missed a few weeks, our leaders are sending them that link so they can still stay in touch with what we have going on. Is it the same as coming to service? No. But does it allow that student to be felt and heard in the moment of their need or where they're at in life where they just can't make it because they don't drive or they're not socially, you know, at a socially healthy place to where they want to show up in front of people? Well, their small group leader can love on them just by simply sending a website, right?
yeah,
That's not something that yours or I parents would see and think, oh, that's loving. But our students see that as, wow, they're meeting me where I'm at. And that's
gotcha.
really cool.
So how do you go from meeting the person to where they're at to helping them grow and move beyond where they're
Intentionality.
at? Yeah.
Not only it can't be just that one action, right?
Oh yeah, of
It's
course.
it's gotta be it's gotta be consistent and there's gotta be follow through. Um, the student that I had a conversation with that caused me to be a little bit behind tonight. Um, I've been dropping little nuggets like, "Hey, how are you? Hey, did you know about this? You know, do we have this coming up?" And then when she shows up, I talk with her and I ask her how she's doing, how her family's doing. Um, and now we're sitting there talking about the gospel. And she's definitely a little bit more on the side of nervous, not really the most socially confident person, but she's sitting there holding conversation and dialogue with me about sin, about how sin could be in this world. It's just really cool. And our smart leaders are having conversations like that too.
Gotcha, man. Like I am, I think it's like phenomenal that technology's gotten to a point where you can have pretty solid, healthy relationships, like with people who live in different cities, states, and countries, like they do. Like I think that's awesome. I think what you and I are doing here, the fact that we're able to do this, is is really cool. And I
Yeah.
don't think we actually understand how amazing it is because we even like never really lived in a place where you had to wait weeks and months to get a message,
Right,
right?
right, right.
Like when you hear about people who like fought like in the Civil War and World War II, like they were still fighting like after those wars were over because the message had not got to them yet. Like
Yeah,
that's unthinkable. But
yeah,
like now we can know within seconds what happened across the other side of the world.
yeah,
Within seconds, I can have a face to face conversation with you through like my iPhone and that kind of stuff. Like that stuff is incredible technology, and like
yeah,
we should like be really thankful for that. I do have like an increasing concern about the amount of like antisocialness, anti how antisocial like people are, like our age and younger, and
right,
like how they don't like to go out in the public. How like they like I'm not gonna go to HEB. I'll just go to my phone. I'm not gonna
right,
go like grab a burger. I'll just have it dropped off at my house. I'm not gonna do this. I'll have somebody bring it to me so I don't have to leave my house.
right,
Like
right,
I'm not gonna go to church because like I don't want to be around people. It makes me nervous or like that kind of stuff. Like there's an increasing amount of all of that that at some point we have to see that as a problem, and we have to be willing to like I would argue to be willing to love people enough
yeah,
to make them
hmm,
uncomfortable, to push them to grow out of that uncomfortable like bubble that's like that they're
yes,
in.
yes,
Otherwise, if we just cater to them where they're at, we're helping them in a way that's actually not helping them, and that's making them worse. And they're
right,
ultimately not living a lifestyle that God had designed for them to live.
yeah. It's bondage.
Yeah,
It's bondage.
yeah,
Because you become you're in bondage to this platform, and that's the only way that you feel that. And so that's the only way you feel connection, the only way you feel love, the only way you feel satisfaction. And you and I both know that's not what God's ultimate design for us is. Um, and so I want to see if you share the same viewpoint on this. But if I'm someone who has been presented the love of Christ, who struggles with social anxiety, um, who has believed in this message, believe in the gospel, but I struggle with anxiety. I don't want to be around people, and um, I'm too nervous. I'm not confident enough. It's just insecurity, right? Like at that down to a root issue, what would you call that?
like what like to the root issue. What would I call like social anxiety?
Yeah, like where does that come from?
Dude. Um, I think it's different. It's different, man. Like it's. I mean, I think you can say that sometimes it is insecurity, right?
Right?
I think a lot of time, dude, because I'm not dodging the question, but I don't think it's that simple.
Yeah, yeah,
For some people, it is insecurity.
yeah,
For some people, they probably didn't have like a good, a healthy childhood growing up, and so like they probably didn't. They're like they probably didn't see a lot of people growing up, and so like they just feel really anxious and nervous around other people because they didn't like they weren't able to learn the social cues you
for
learn
sure.
growing up. And so like for example, like during the I mean COVID, not COVID or whatever. COVID, I call it C19 because I just think it sounds cool. Um, but like
Yeah,
so during COVID, I mean I'd spent most of COVID out in rural West Texas, so I didn't have to put up with, like a lot of the bull crap that a lot of people like you probably had to deal with, and even like a lot of the crap you had to
mm,
put up with. Probably that is what people like in California, New York,
right, 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 right,
Wisconsin,
right, right,
they had to do.
right,
But like a lot of kids wore masks to school for a couple of years, like
right,
little kids,
right.
and so you got little kids in kindergarten, first, second, third grade who were wearing masks every day for like years, and
Yeah,
unfortunately, some of them still are. And so during that young age, you're supposed to be learning a lot of like natural social cues that you just learn subconsciously from being around other kids and other adults every day in these different environments. And so like most of the your social cues come from like right here, come from your mouth and your face.
right,
And so a lot of kids were deprived of that for 2 years or more,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so they are socially like behind, and
Yeah.
that's a problem. And it's
Right.
being proven to be a problem because their social growth is stunted. And so, like a lot of kids, if they grew up, their parents didn't let them out of the house for like X number of reasons. Like that can create social anxiety. Is kind of what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
Being like abused can cause social anxiety. Maybe like you have a certain personality type and your parents didn't really respect it or understand it growing up, that could cause social anxiety. And so like there's a lot of things, man.
Yeah.
Is that like kind of what you're getting at?
Yes. And I guess I don't want to sound rash by saying this, but
No, go
like
for it. I don't care.
I just think it's a result of a broken world.
No, yeah, it is
And
most
I
definitely.
and I know I jumped from there to there like really quick, but it's a broken world.
Yeah,
And that's how I think of it. And so to summarize it, I think that insecurity at the root issue is pride. And it's and I don't want to say social anxiety, but insecurity itself. If you think about it, it's pride. It's you don't want to go through the stress, the pain of having to be vulnerable about things because you care a lot about you. And so you
yeah.
don't want, right? And so that's pride. And what do we know that pride is? Pride's sinful. Would you agree with that?
No, yeah. Sorry, man. I thought you froze.
Oh, no, good. Yeah.
No, yeah. Of course, like pride
And
is
so
simple. Like
like,
scripture's clear that pride is simple. Yeah.
and so that's where I line up with you is just like, when it comes to dealing with someone who you're discipling to and a student that you're discipling to, that's why it's so, so important to walk a fine line of, okay, I'm going to meet this person where they're at. Why? Well, because the foundation of our faith, Jesus, did, right?
Yes.
And so he met people where they're at, but called them to something more.
Right.
And so, what does that look like for us discipling to Gen Z? Well, we got to meet them where they're at. And I think that I'm blessed to be a part of a church that has that's been their mission. Um, and I'm also blessed to be a part of a church that we want to equip those students now who struggle with social anxiety, who struggle with whether that's a result of their insecurities or it's a result of the cards they were dealt, like a lot of things that you said, right? But we all know all of it. It's a result of broken world that was because of sin, and because we are bearers of the good news of Jesus Christ, that we get to encourage these students to know that, hey, the reason why we deal with these things that you and I are dealing with, whether that's your insecurities, your social anxiety, your image issues, whatever it might be, that is all a result of sin, and Jesus died for that. Jesus died so that you no longer have to live in bondage to that. And so that's where I think when we identify the root of the issue, it's a heart issue. It's how all of us in some way, shape, or form are affected by sin. And
Yes.
we as Christ followers should bear the image of what it looks like to no longer live in bondage to those things because we are now in chains for Christ. And so the big question is, how do we do that with Generation Z? Well, I think part of it is meeting them where they're at, and then, like you said, finding a way to call them to something better than being in bondage to their technology and finding connection only through technology.
Let me ask it to you this way. Let me ask you at a more personal level. So, like,
Yes,
I mean, y'all are part of a big church. So the way y'all
yes,
make big church smaller is through small groups. And like I get that, man. There's
right, right, right.
nothing inherently wrong with that. But like for you personally, man, like how like because I'm assuming the way you disciple through small groups, but you're not limited to discipling just through small groups. I'm assuming
Right.
like I assume that you're building close intimate relationships with some of your students,
Yeah,
and like and so like if you've got a student who is like and I guess in bondage to like the technology, like you're saying. Like, what is a way that you have or will or can meet them where they're at, like you're saying, and then like out of mercy and grace, meet them where they're at, and work with them, uh, so that way they can move out of that bondage and start living the kind of life that God created them to live.
Yeah.
So small groups is a
Well,
part of that, but it can't be just small groups.
no, for sure.
Yeah,
Um, there's it's our model, right? Is corporate and corporate worship, can sit under teaching of our awesome teaching team. Um, our from there, we then have small groups in our youth ministry, right? But between that is where a lot of our core values come into play. One of the ones that we are really, really um, attacking, if you will, this summer and leading into next fall is how do we partner with parents better? Because there's that gap from, moving from, okay, now I'm not just sitting under teaching on Sunday mornings, but I'm taking time out of my week to go meet with a smaller group to dive deeper into it. When it comes to the context of being in youth ministry, these kids, like we talked about, these kids don't drive themselves. They can only control so much. And so what's their avenue to getting to these events or their motivation to be at these events? Well, it's the parents. It's partnering with those parents and letting those parents know that they are loved and that we are for them. We're not against them, right? A lot of, sometimes parents may feel that, you know, a youth ministry has it all figured out and they're trying to do better than they are as a parent. And that's not true. We want to partner with you as a parent and pour into you because we know that no one spends more time with those kids than the parents do. And no one cares more than those parents. No one loves their students more than those parents. So for me personally, it's what's my relationship like with those parents? And I can't say I'm perfect at that. Like I've struggled with that because it's
yeah,
hard for me to, we're talking about, you and I connecting with Generation Z. Well, this conversation is okay, how do I connect with the generation above me? you know, and
yeah,
that's a challenge in and of itself. But the beauty in this is the answer to your question is partnering with the home, the parent household, whatever that situation looks like, and finding ways to disciple one on one. And the reason why I always say small groups is because our small groups lead to that. Our small groups develop connection in small group. We encourage our small group leaders to connect with parents because that's the best way that you're going to have a strong, meaningful connection with that child. Because once you gain rapport with that parent's going to want to be surrounded by a team. And when that parent has a team, they're going to work much more like a well-oiled machine when it comes to influencing their child when they know they're not alone.
gotcha. All right, man. So I went under the cyberspace, dude,
Okay.
and asked a lot of people to describe Generation Z in 3 words.
Okay.
How do you think that went?
um, Not good. It's like it
Yeah,
reminds me of my boss, Taylor. He encouraged me to share the gospel in 12 words or less, and that was hard. Um,
dude.
so I can't imagine explaining Generation Z in
You
3 words.
know the rapper Propaganda, right?
Yeah, did he do it in like 6 words or what?
Well, he did like for like 4 minutes or something,
Okay.
like a long time ago. You were probably like still in high school.
Yeah.
God, I hate how long ago that was. All right, man. So I just want to get your take on these. They're mostly negative, dude. I'm just gonna let you know, right?
I saw Propaganda not too long ago, actually. Well,
Like,
about a little bit, like 2 years,
what are you
almost two
doing?
years ago.
Like, where? What was going on?
It was Andy Mineo's most recent album tour,
Oh,
Neverland 2.
I did not like
And
that album.
He came out in Houston. Yeah, it wasn't my favorite of his. He sounded way too much like, normal rap, but it is what it is. If you're listening to this, Andy, I still love you. You're my favorite rapper of all time. But anyways, you were
I,
saying,
I I really don't want to go like a CHH crap talking fest because
yeah,
I
we can't.
but,
We can't.
all right, man. So here's what people said, man, and I want to get your response on it.
Okay.
They are indulgent and have a victim complex.
Indulgent in victim complex.
Yeah,
That's still.
that's not people don't follow the rules,
Gosh dang it.
man. It is 3 words, but it's two descriptions, right?
Yeah.
So they said so like, is that fair or is that overly harsh? Like, what do you think?
Can you say it one more time? Sorry.
Right. So I asked, what are 3 words that describe Generation Z? And this person gave me 3 words, but 2 things. And they said indulgence and they have victim complexes.
What are my thoughts on that?
Yeah, dude.
Indulgent meaning they take in and take in and take in.
Yeah. Other way for saying that is indulgent.
Let's clarify. I would
went to college.
agree with. Say the second part one more time. Victim complex. Victim complex.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
would agree with. I would agree with both to an extent, but my extent isn't very far from my. If this is yes, and I'm
Yeah.
answering the question, my extent is like right here.
Okay.
Okay. I think we're all indulgent. Like,
Fair.
I think we're all extremely indulgent, whether you're indulgent in food, whether you're indulgent in what you look at, you're indulgent in how you spend your time. Like, I think that's a very broad statement to make. You know,
Fair enough.
I would maybe if you clarified, he has 3 words, right?
Right.
So
Right.
he can't, but I don't think that's fair at all to say that just they are indulgent. Um,
No, I would agree with you on that.
and then victim. How is it worded?
Victim complex.
Victim complex. Um, Man, I would say I've played the victim complex a lot. Like, I'm just trying to personalize this to me, even though I'm a millennial. It's like we've all played victim. Now, here's the issue. We live in an age, like we talked about, where technology is so prevalent, where
Yeah.
people can relate to something that didn't happen to them, right? And so it's like,
I kind of agree with you on that.
you know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
someone like you who maybe has walked a similar life as you or whatnot, something happened to this person, over here, and because I have some level of relatability to that person,
Yeah.
I can claim some of the hurt there. That's what I mean by that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I
I
and
think
so go
those are
ahead.
illusions. I think those are illusions.
Right, right, I agree.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
do I think that Gen Z has access to that type of mindset more so than millennials did, or more so than, the generation before us did?
Yeah.
Yes. But I don't think that's their character trait or something to describe
Okay.
them with. I just think it's a result of what they have access to. Does that make
Okay.
sense?
Yeah. That's fair. That's generous. Not oh mean like I don't mean that to be critical.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Would you disagree?
Um.
What's
Um.
your stance on
No,
that?
hey. First of all, man, this is my podcast. Sorry. Like I ask questions here.
Yeah, this is the skill of a great interviewee.
I would argue that. So I think at one point or another, I think everybody has at one point been prone to playing victim, right?
Right, right, right.
Like you said at the beginning when you answered the question, I think that's true. I think there's a level of self awareness there that is good. But I do think that as a characteristic of like that generation is most prone to the idea of a victim complex than previous generations, probably the couple of ones before them.
I would agree.
Um,
I would agree.
I actually think
Uh,
I actually think boomers are really bad about that, but that's another conversation.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah,
but like I do think Gen Z is actually really bad about that. Man.
yeah,
There's an overwhelming amount of like footage on the internet that proves that
yeah.
they're a lot of the ones that are out there writing and like doing like really awful, ineffective protesting. They tend to be the ones that get on the phone and talk about like I'm literally shaking because this thing happened, like and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so like, does that mean that every person who is Gen Z does that? No.
Right,
But that generation is the most prone to do things like
right.
that. I
And
think
I think
that's
there's some,
yeah. Go ahead.
and I think there's some truth to it, to this statement though. Like, yes, because of how this generation reacts to seeing this story or watching this video, now there's a burden on the media to put out stories that are going to attract that attention
Yes,
for
it's
for money and stuff. And so
why
so
did you call it
like
a burden? Though? It's not a burden.
I mean it is a burden because how
It's a
many
burden. They don't
people
have to, man. They can just do the job with integrity.
yes, exactly,
They
but
have a
there's
burden to do the job with integrity.
okay, that's fair. I was meaning it in a negative sense, but you're
Okay.
using I get it. I get it. I
All
get
right.
it.
Fair enough. We're good. We're good.
So to answer the question, I don't necessarily think that that description is fair,
Okay.
but I would agree with it to an extent.
Citizen. All right. Um, let me see. I'm not going to go through all these because it'll get really depressing. I do want to do one more though. And I'm kind of picking. Just a second. I am picking just things that people said that you hear quite often. Um, is Gen Z radical?
IR or radical? Sorry.
RADICAL.
Okay. I thought you said irradical.
Okay.
Um, are they radical? Let's look at the definition of radical. I have my definition, but I'm interested to see. Okay.
Let's see.
My definition is going to extremes.
Yeah. Yeah. Extreme or drastic. Yeah. I consider myself radical in a lot of ways.
Relating to or affecting the fundamental nature of something.
I'm radically against taxes. I stand
Advocating or
taxes, dude.
based. I can't.
Fucking
I
hate taxes.
every week I'll get on Facebook my one time a week and I'll see your weekly rant on taxes or shared
Yeah, dude.
meme on taxes
Yeah, man.
or based on
What's the appropriate amount of taxes?
none.
Yeah, yeah. There we go, dude. So you're radical too, man.
I'm just reading. I'm quoting your post. I'm not making my belief statement. Don't cancel me.
Oh, dude, he hates taxes. He wants to bomb the IRS.
um. Okay. So
I want to bomb the IRS so bad.
radical. You're radical. Advocating or based on thorough or complete political or social change,
Yeah.
representing or supporting an extreme or progressive section of a political party.
So I'm gonna be honest. The guy that posted that,
Absolutely.
I think that's exactly what this guy's talking about when he said radical.
I think if that's the definition, there are so many young people and my age too
Yeah.
that are professionals on what they're talking about,
Yeah.
self-proclaimed professionals, and outrageous about it. And I would say so. I would say yes. I would agree with
Okay.
that. And I don't necessarily think that that's a. I don't necessarily always think that's a bad thing.
Not necessarily, man. Like if they're radically against taxes, I think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
However, I don't think a lot of the radicals within Gen Z are against taxes. I think they radically want to increase taxes. Maybe. Maybe.
I'm not an expert on it,
Depends.
so.
I'm not either.
But, but I just think too, like whenever I read this word, this is, my mind and how I work or how I think about it. But um, I just think of Jesus, right? Like Jesus was radical
Yeah,
and
dude.
radical for all the right reasons.
Yeah, dude.
So I don't see it as a bad quality and I don't see it as a negative quality. I just think of it as, you know, a trait. And I think it does describe Gen Z for sure.
Like taxes go against his moral law. Like don't steal.
I'm not educated enough on taxes to banter on this. I'm sorry.
Did you consent to that money being taken out of your paycheck?
I got an extension recently, so I guess I can't say I haven't yet.
So you okay, man. If you consented to that money being taken out of your paycheck, then I mean you didn't, but it's cool.
Y'all need to follow this guy on social media because these are all things that I've seen on his Facebook page, and it's great.
All right, I got one more, man. Let me do one more.
Okay.
Gen Z is angry.
Gen Z is angry.
Yeah,
No, I would say passionate.
I love you, dude. You're such a positive guy.
Because
So
but
yeah,
here's the
go ahead,
but
go ahead and expand on that.
I don't mean that positively because passion can
Yeah.
be
Okay.
positive or like I could have
Yeah.
passion for terrible things, right?
Well, there's like the legal term for like some you you can murder somebody, but it could be considered a crime of passion.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's a negative way that you can say that passion is used. But go ahead, man. Go ahead and expand on that.
Yeah, no, I think passion is more accurate. And if whoever wrote that was coming from that perspective of passion in a negative sense, then that's their prerogative. My
Yeah.
point of it is passion is prevalent in Gen Z. You open TikTok and bam, you have some passionate Gen Z self-proclaimed trainer in the fitness industry who is passionate about what he's doing. He's passionate about his knowledge, even though he may not have gone through all the schooling and all that stuff for it, but he's done it. He's got the experience. You know what I mean? Like, you know, passion is definitely prevalent throughout
Okay.
Gen Z.
So honestly, man, I don't go around like, even though like I'm kind of like trying to like push you on about some of your responses and stuff.
I love
I'm
it.
not
I like when
here
you
like,
push me.
yeah, that's good. That's good. Like
Yep.
I'm not like I don't go around bashing Gen Z like a lot of people do.
Yeah.
There's certain things I see within Gen Z that I kind of find concerning.
Yeah. For
Just
sure.
like with any generation.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, there's a lot of people that talk about how like Gen Z is already like hopeless and all that kind of stuff and like all that kind of bullcrap, which is just crap. Like it's way too early to actually make judgments on Gen Z. But like there are things that are like concerning and alarming within Gen Z that is probably a little more unique to them that we didn't see like within a couple of the previous generations, right? Like I mean, there is like a lot of like radical stuff within Gen Z that you didn't see with like the last few generations. Um, like there's a lot of socialist and Marxist ideologies that Gen Z tends to be more accepting to that the previous generations weren't.
Cultural.
Um, I see what you did there, dude. I appreciate that, man. But like Gen Z is still young, man, and so like we don't really know how it's going to evolve. Um, like and like they do seem you can call it angry, you can call it passionate. Passionate, I like that problem. That you see within them a little bit more than you saw in previous generations. That can be a good thing. That can also be a bad thing. Um, their dependence on not just technology, man, but easy technology, like the phone. their smartphone, their dependence on like easy technology isn't inherently a bad thing, but it's something I think that's worth paying attention to.
Yeah.
And the one thing that we didn't talk about this time that if you'd like to come back and talk about, I would like to, because you do work with these people every day.
Yeah.
Is how open they are to gender theory and like the transgenderism and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
They are statistically more accepting and open to that stuff than any of, including women's, like way more accepting to that. That is like heavily concerning.
Before I move on, can I get my 3 words?
Go for it, man. Do it.
Love, peace, seekers.
Okay.
Like, and again, I think love encompasses passion, right? Like, and I have a different angle than that last person, right? Like angry, love. I think that one can argue that those are opposites, but it comes from passion, right? And we see that. We see peace, right? Like we want social justice. That's a high priority of Gen Z. And so that's prevalent. And seekers, like they don't just sit, they do, right? Like Gen Z seeks it out. They do it, whether that's via social media or technology, or they go out and stand up for what they believe in. They protest. And it may be out of passion. It may not be out of logic and correctness. But it is out of love, right? And so I think wisdom is important to have with those things, and to be careful to go and act on those without wisdom is dangerous, right? Seeking love and seeking peace without wisdom is dangerous. And we know that true wisdom comes from our relationship with Jesus, right? So that's our burden as ministers, is
for sure
wisdom and truth.
Absolutely.
Behind all that.
And so,
all right. So what was your following question in terms of shifting to that next conversation?
Oh, I do want to add that real quick. It's like one of the reasons I think this is a good conversation to have with somebody like such as yourself who works with like these kids like every day, is like you have every day like on the ground like experience, like hanging out, pouring like yourself like into these kids and that kind of thing. Where like a lot of people, their perception about this generation comes from what the algorithm on their social platform of choice has showed them like about these people, right?
Yeah.
And so like it's what the algorithm of their social platform of choice has showed them, whether it be through like long video format, like short reels and stories and that kind of thing, or whatever like political news bias has showed them and told them to think about like those people.
Yeah.
And like whether anybody wants to admit it or not, like everybody is being like in a sense kind of like tricked in what to think about something like every day.
Yeah.
And like everybody has a responsibility to fight that stuff to an extent.
100%.
But, yeah.
And that's what I was going to say is like, what we are tricked when we don't put on the helmet of salvation, right? Like that's just, when you say that, that's what came to mind. It's like, okay, that's why it's so important to put on the armor of God, right? And put on the belt of truth and have those things ready and put those things on every day, because if we don't, we will be tricked. But for those who are in Christ, we have now the ability to choose a different way, and to not be tripped up. And I'm not perfect at it, and I know you're not perfect at it, but I mean, that's my guess. I'm assuming there. You may be perfect at it, but yeah.
But like hypothetically, man, like let's just say Gen Z is radical. Let's just say Gen Z is angry. Let's just say Gen Z is like has a victim complex. Let's just say like it's all these things that I'm reading off of the screen over here.
Yeah.
Let's just say that is true.
Yeah.
Every single one of those is a reason to go like and minister to those kids.
Yeah.
Like let's just be pessimistic, say they're right. Well, that's a stronger reason to go and pour into them, to minister to them, to disciple them, to evangelize to them, to serve them, and to like raise them up so that way we can see them become followers of Christ and become transformed people. It's like,
Yeah.
if that is even true, that's not a reason to hate on them and neglect them. That's a more
Right.
reason to go, like, love them and important.
100%. 100%. And I think it's important to recognize too, like, we were reading in our Bible study today in Psalm, David, not David, A- Asaph is writing in this part of Psalm. Um, and he's expressing how he views other people who are not following God, who are not following, um, his commands. And he gets to a certain point though in his rant, and he's like, "Oh, but when I stepped into your sanctuary, I realized my wretchedness. I realized my bitterness in my heart." And so I think even before we get to that point where we feel that need because there is this depravity and this bondage that Generation Z is dealing with, we also need to recognize that God first loved us. We didn't bring ourselves out of our own bondage, our own sin, right? And so when we go at it, like you said, in Generation Z, there is some Generation Z individuals that are that way, right? That are
Yeah,
angry at, like, there is. The only way that we are going to prime our heart to go and disciple to them is when we first check ourselves at the door of a Generation Z's home and realize I sinned too. And I was a child of wrath, before I was a child of God. And I need to
yeah.
come at it with that humility. Because if we don't, we are going to be argumentative, trying to be right, and not fostering relationship first.
There you go, man. All right. So let me ask you this:
Yeah.
you're a gamer, right?
Yeah.
You're soon to be like professional Call of Duty gamer.
Not professional.
All right.
But
Semi-pro,
I say what?
semi-pro.
Let's put it this way. A couple nights ago, I was playing and I hop around a corner and I lace this kid. I mean, I just wipe him off the mat. And you get death comms, right? Whenever you kill someone, so it lets you know what that person's saying. And so I go, ga 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 ga. Kid's dead. And he was like, "Oh my gosh, that kid was good." That was the response. And so I'll let that speak for itself. I'm good.
Are esports sports?
No,
Oh, thank God. Okay.
but I
Oh,
will
oh gosh.
say, I will
Seriously.
say that when it comes to the processing and the multitasking that an individual has to do to keep up with some of the level of gaming that there is,
Please don't.
it requires just as
Please don't.
much brain activity as having to read is a safety dropping, as a cornerback pressing, is the middle linebacker sitting in zone, or is he blitzing? Is that rusher coming? It's the same exact thing. Same exact thing.
No, it's not.
Mentally, but it's not a sport, and here's why: because this has to process to exertion of the body, right? So, like, if I'm processing this here, okay, what am I doing locomotively to respond to that? Whereas you're this. If this is a sport, then every businessman who walks the street of New York texting his wife, boss, coworkers, and clients all at once, that's got to be a sport too. So, and it's
Okay.
not.
All right. You almost lost me, man, but we're good. We're good.
Cool.
Um, esports are competitive hobbies.
Yes,
All right.
we can be friends.
Yeah, we can still be friends now. We're good. Dude, there we go. Hold on a second. Oh, just wrong. Is it? No, yeah, it's this one. There we go. All right, cool. Dude, man, like I've almost gotten jumped because I said esports on sports before.
People are crazy. Yeah, is cheerleading a
So,
sport?
man, you know what? Yes, it is actually.
I
Yeah,
I I I I I strongly disagree with anyone that says, "Oh, cheerleading's not a sport." Bull crap.
not just
Absolutely a
because
sport.
like, never mind. It's a sport, dude. I don't think a lot of people know that they actually go to competitions.
No, yeah, I there's
I
it's
had no
so
idea until I watched Bring It
it's
On.
it's so prevalent here in Houston, bro. It's big. My best friend who just got engaged, his fiance um was huge into cheerleading and stuff, and she went to Disney all the time. Went to the EA Sports, not ESPN Center in Disney, and like
Yeah.
all that stuff is crazy.
I don't understand it at all, but it's still a sport.
Yeah, yeah,
I don't get it. It doesn't make any sense to me. It's just what it is, but it's a sport.
yeah.
I would much rather like watch gymnastics than cheerleading.
Oh yeah, for sure.
They're not the same thing, but like they're both female dominated, I guess.
Yeah.
All right, man. So for the most part, we've been talking about like Gen Z this whole time, right? And so we've talked about like kind of your experience as you minister to Gen Z. We kind of like talked about like what we see as like social norms and what's trending. Brought in a little bit of like feedback from the socials of like people describing Gen Z in 3 words and that kind of thing. What would you like to say to people who probably are on the verge of like they don't kind of view Gen Z as like worth their time, or maybe they just like they're scared, they're nervous, like they don't really know how to feel like they know how to talk to them, relate to them. Like, what would you like to say like to that person?
I'm gonna try not to get emotional. Um, but it's already happening. To the person who's frustrated and
Yeah,
angry at the next generation, um, like I said earlier, I urge you to remind yourself of how Roman talks about all of us.
there you
Um,
go, man.
right? Like, man, I've been way on this heavy myself this past week, right? Like, I can find myself just casting out my anger at others. I'm not where I want to be because of others. I'm not where I want to be because if I was just at a different time in life and I was doing this at this time in life, like it would be better. No, I need to recognize where I was and where I sometimes find myself and remind myself that I am in need of God's grace, no
Yeah,
matter what. And so that applies to the individual who is angry at the next generation, who wants the next generation to just conform to what you think or how you think they should be. And I urge you to remind yourself of where you came from and who you were when Jesus died for you, and then rethink why you're angry and why you're not heartbroken. And I think that will change the way you go about navigating your future as you obviously care about Gen Z. That is going to humble you and prepare your heart to actually have real connection that matters and not just be right, even though you might be. And then to the person who's just scared, just know that they're not looking, Gen Z isn't looking for you to be right. They're looking for you to be loving. I say that very clearly because yes, being right is important and bringing truth is important. And a lot of reasons why
yeah,
I get scared personally, reason why I get scared personally is because I don't want to do it wrong. Like
yeah,
I know that's true. I know that being true is important. So I get scared because I just don't want to be wrong. So I shy away from it in the first place. Just be loving. Speak from your heart. And that's something that I have to get reminded of all the time. Be who God made you to be. And that's bold. Be a bold version of you and just love. And when you develop that connection and when you develop that relationship, there's going to be a time because of how you develop that relationship where you're finally going to be able to speak truth. And shoving truth down people's throats when they're not ready for it, when they need milk and not steak, and forcing them to chew on steak when they're still when they still need the bottle, it's not going to work. They're going to choke, right? So
Yeah.
if you're afraid of being wrong or afraid of doing it wrong and they're too intimidating for you, just know they're not looking for you to be right. They're looking for you to be relational. And it's a lot easier to be relational first. And then when you're relational first, being right comes a lot easier because they're ready for you to share your truth.
Awesome, man.
I
Thanks
need to
for sharing
cry.
that. You got close, though. You got close.
Yeah, I got close.
But thanks for sharing that, man. Thanks for coming on again. And let's see. You want to come back on again sometime?
Yeah, sure.
You sure?
I'll be
I
honest,
guess.
dude. Like I told my I had to leave earlier because my boss stopped by and I had to talk to him about summer camp stuff. But
Yeah.
I told him, I was like, dude, I have no idea what I'm about to talk about. Like I'm still learning at this, and I still like half the things I'm sitting back here saying, was that right? Is that true? So take that as it is. If what I said has some value to it, awesome. But thanks for chatting with me, bro, and thanks for being someone that, even though I know this is gonna go out to, however many people,
Yeah.
this always just feels like a one-on-one conversation. And I feel safe with you talking about these things, knowing that anyone's gonna hear it. And I just want to share it to you, dude. And I don't want you to cut this out. So many of my family members
Yeah.
so many of my family members that come from a lot of the same um, background that I do in terms of my testimony going from, a specific denomination to another, and then not claiming denomination anymore, just calling myself a Christian. Like, some of my family uh, has been there, or maybe even are there. And I just want you to know that there was so many good full of meat conversations that were had with my family, and um, so many of my family watched it all the way through. And comments like, "I never thought about it that way." And just so thank you for your platform and for everyone that you work with to do this, and for everyone that's watching. This is a salt of the earth guy, and I would not be who I am if it weren't for him. So that's my
Appreciate
send
it,
off.
man. Appreciate you. Thanks a lot, dude. I'm
Love you,
glad
man.
that it's fun to do this. It's interesting to see like how we get connected with different people. But like I'm just glad that um it's making an impact in people's lives. And so like
Yeah,
dude, I love that your family watches it, man. I love that it's created phenomenal conversations.
yeah,
I love hearing that it's changed people's lives with your family. Like that's awesome stuff, man. Those are the things that like we hope will happen. Those are the things we hope will happen when we record these and put them out there and that kind of thing.
yeah.
Like obviously we don't get views like Joe Rogan does and that kind of thing, and that's
Right,
perfectly
right,
fine.
right, right.
But like just knowing that like you said, man, like you just shared, like people from the family who've gone through similar things. They
Yep.
watch it. It creates conversation, creates questions. Lives have been changed from it. Like that's fantastic, man. I
And
love
they're
hearing
all
that.
on they're all on the East Coast, like
Yeah,
Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, Tennessee. It's really cool the reach that you have.
that's cool, man. That's awesome, dude. Thanks for sharing that, man. Thanks for coming on again.
They just killed the lights off at my office.
All right, dude. We're about to.
Keep
All right,
this
we're
in the
signing off.
podcast. All right, man.
We're signing off. Anyways, thanks everybody for joining us. If you enjoyed the conversation, like I said before, don't forget to like the video. Please subscribe, click the bell. It makes a difference. Any comments, any questions, anything you have, like please drop them below, and we'll get back to you. And until next time, everybody, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Amen.